Hi, everybody. It's Josh. Look, YouTube is already replete with dudes talking about video games. But it is a topic that I'm fairly passionate about. I haven't always been. And I've been hesitant to add my voice to the conversation because there's, I feel like a newcomer and a pretender, and there's already enough people, and there's kind of this vibe to YouTube video game discussion that, there's some stuff I enjoy and some stuff that I don't want anything to do with. And I've just been hesitant to think that I have anything to contribute. I don't have like a rich history and backstory with video games like most video game YouTubers do. In fact, I've only been playing video games seriously since about 2019, just before the pandemic. And then, maybe the pandemic figures into my snowball into the world of video games. But I'm going to try and tell a little bit of my story of how I found myself obsessed with video games and now steeped in video games and consoles and devices and platforms and emulation and all that stuff. Maybe it occurred to me that maybe my unique perspective of kind of being a noob dad deciding to get a Switch Lite for just casual gaming, time wasting purposes, to finding my way through all of the genres and platforms and all that. Maybe it could be helpful or at least interesting to some of you out there. So I never owned a Nintendo system before the Switch at all, ever. I saw Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt at friends' houses in the 80s. And that was literally the extent of my exposure to Nintendo. I would play Duck Hunt, which was fun. Anybody could kind of pick it up. And then I would try to play Mario, and it was a disaster. I thought it was cool, but it was just, not for me. In college, I did buy a PlayStation. And that's my only real, through line with gaming, is that I have actually owned every PlayStation console, 1 through 5, including a PSP and a Vita. So that makes it sound like maybe I was into video games. But really, on the one hand, when it came to the games, I really stuck to safe, Insomniac and Naughty Dog games, Crash Bandicoot and Ratchet and Clank and Uncharted and things like that. And then really by the time you get to PS3 and 4, I'm mostly using my PlayStation to play Blu-rays and to stream movies. That's really what I was in it for. The PS3 was the best Blu-ray player you could get. Just like now, I think that they would still say perhaps that the PS5 is one of the better 4K players that you could get. So to me, games have always been something cool for other people to enjoy. It was just not for me. I was intrigued, but I felt kind of like it was out of my class financially. I was kind of raised with that idea that these kind of extravagant things are for other people. And it was out of my league, certainly in terms of ability when I would play games. And then in college, I had roommates who played things like Phantasy Star and Final Fantasy. And that was completely inscrutable to me, the world of RPGs and turn-based things. And that was just, I had no idea what was going on. And I just felt like that was a world that wasn't for me. And, stay tuned. I've changed my tune on that whole business. So then in late 2018, the popularity of the Switch, is huge. And it really caught my eye, specifically at first because of the form factor. I've always been obsessed with handheld gaming. Sitting on a couch, playing on a TV. I've kind of been grooving on my PS5 lately and playing some stuff on there. So I've caught up with that. But really, since I was a kid, the idea of a video game in your hand was super intriguing to me. And so the Switch being a console that could play games on a TV or in your hand, the same games at the same quality, that's what really piqued my interest and finally got me to buy a Switch Lite and a few launch titles along with it. So at the time, I was coming off of a pretty intense Lego hobby that had emptied my wallet and filled my home with plastic doodads. So I needed a new outlet. I needed a new hobby. I needed something that wasn't going to accumulate as much stuff. Video games is still a pretty expensive hobby, but it's not as bad as Lego. Maybe I'll make a video about my Lego experience. I can't look at the stuff now. I really went too hard. For like 5 years, I bought almost every Lego set, and I was riding the sales and looking at the new pieces and molds and prints that were coming out. Anyway, that's a whole separate topic. So with my Switch, I bought 3 starter games. I bought Super Mario Odyssey, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. My case is missing. I suspect that my daughter upstairs has got it. All 3 of these were wildly popular titles from storied franchises and seemed like no-brainers for starter games. They were the Switch games to get at the time. But you have to keep in mind that I had absolutely zero Nintendo experience beyond Duck Hunt at Ian Horvath's house at a sleepover. So I have no Mario franchise experience, I have no Zelda experience, and no Donkey Kong Country anything. I played Odyssey first. It seemed like, the big mascot character, the big platformer game. It seemed like the obvious place to start. And in hindsight, this is probably the easiest of all these 3 games by far, but I found it, at the time, absolutely impenetrable, inscrutable. I had no foundation for what made a Mario game, right? I hadn't played the 2D Marios and then the early 3D Marios or the new Super Mario Brothers and then the 3D World. I hadn't followed the franchise to know the things that make a Mario game. So this major innovation to the Mario formula just felt overwhelming and obtuse to me. Where do I go? What do I do? I didn't know what Mario's moves were. I didn't know what to prioritize, what to collect. I had no idea where to go or what to do. So I played into the second kingdom. I think it's the Sand Kingdom. And then I put it down. I just thought, this is not for me. It's overwhelming. I have no idea what to do. I need some kind of hand-holding. Next was Zelda. Likewise, keep in mind that Breath of the Wild was my very first Zelda experience. So the open world exploration was mind-blowing, and it really, showed what the Switch could do, which, granted, is not as much as some other consoles could do, but it was still, everybody remembers who's played Breath of the Wild what a mind-blowing experience it was, even without Zelda experience. But again, I needed some hand-holding, and this game didn't offer any at all. It was so big and so overwhelming, even more so than the Mario title had been. And on top of that, I felt like the combat was insurmountable and difficult, and weapon durability, weapons breaking, that was a deal breaker. So I put that one down too. Now, keep in mind, I came back and completed these games later, but in those first couple of months, I truly wondered if I had made a huge mistake and if video games just weren't for me. So in light of all of that, Tropical Freeze felt like a breath of fresh air. In hindsight now, I would say decisively, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is the most difficult, the most challenging of those 3 games. When you know what you're doing in each of those games, Tropical Freeze is a very challenging platformer, and it's harder than those other 2 games by far if you know what you're doing. But in terms of genre and presentation, at the time, this was the one that made sense to me. This is the one that hit. Tropical Freeze was a level-based, 3D scrolling platformer like Crash Bandicoot, one of the only franchises that I had a history with. So it was challenging, but I loved it and I ate it up. I'll probably make an additional video where I talk about my thoughts on difficulty and cheating, or at least, assist modes and things like that. Short version is, I'm all for it. Whatever makes a game fun, go for it. Cheat, do whatever you need to do. So Nintendo's games have historically been challenging, but they seem now to have this kind of business-related rule that there's some kind of assist mode or easy mode in all their games. So the funky mode in Tropical Freeze really helped me experience the game for the first time. And then I got really good at it, and I went back and played it in the normal way with DK. And I aced that game. I absolutely love Tropical Freeze. It's one of the best video games I've ever played to this day. So from there, I just kind of spiraled through the genres and the franchises, and I started fussing around with emulation, which I'll talk about in another video. But eventually, I was able to go back and play the classic Mario games, the 2D, and then the 3D scrolling, and then the 3D world, and those gave me the foundations of what makes a Mario game, so that when I came back to Odyssey, it clicked, and I'm like, oh, this is what you do, and this is why this one is, super cool, riff on a Mario game, and so I just I ate it up. It was great. And likewise with Zelda, I eventually completed Zelda and all the DLC and Breath of the Wild. So with a firmer understanding of how all those older games work, the Switch entries, clicked for me, and I enjoyed them thoroughly. From here, it's like a skill tree. How Zelda leads me to more action RPGs, and Mario leads me to more indie platformers and things like that. And fast forward now to 2023, I own hundreds of first-party, third-party Nintendo games and indie games on physical media and digitally. I own several Switch consoles, different types, and an Aya Neo Windows handheld PC. I own a Steam Deck and about a dozen little handheld emulation devices. And I'll make a separate video where I give a tour of all of those. And along the way, I went from playing it safe with mascot platformers and action games to getting more and more bold and discovering lots of different genres, and ultimately RPGs and strategy games and turn-based and all those things which had put me off so intensely back in the day. I will make some more specific videos about my journey of which games led to which games and how I find myself where I am now. And I think this might be my unique place in the video game conversation, a once timid newcomer to games in my 40s with no background and in gaming culture or these franchises or platforms other than a little bit of Crash Bandicoot, to the discovery and orientation and becoming more and more bold and intrigued by this and that corner of gaming. And so I think maybe sharing my journey could be helpful to someone else who's dipping their toe in the waters. And maybe I can just share some of the things that I learned and how I went from playing it safe to kind of diving in deep. So let me know in the comments if any of this is interesting to you, and if there's any specific topics you'd like me to cover. I'm going to get going on my gaming device tour. I think I'm going to do that next. And then I'll also start to talk about some specific titles and how I kind of jumped from title to title, and how certain games prepared me to be more prepared and more intrigued by things that had previously been not for me. Thank you for watching. That's enough for this video. Thank you for your time. If you like the stuff on my channel, you can support me on Patreon. The link is in the description, and there's other things too. I've got merch on Etsy, and I've got a coffee site, and just thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Goodbye.